Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney, alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, it is July 29th, and there is just that. There's not a whole lot going on, but Marty Necas new deal, so that's something. I don't know. That was a strange situation, but he's got a new contract.
Yeah, it's weird. You and I were talking about it before we started recording, and it kind of feels like we're in a position now where nobody's happy. That Necas very clearly has wanted to get out of Carolina.
He doesn't want to be there.
He needs more. He feels like he deserves more opportunity. He feels like he could probably be putting up better counting stats somewhere else. But at the same time, the Hurricanes aren't just going to give him away. And depending on what you think, there were links to various teams out there. I know prior to the Bruins finally getting some chips, even if you can debate the merits of Zadorov and Lindholm, they were a team that was linked to him. The Jets have been linked to him, but it just kind of feels like a no-win situation for all the parties involved. No one is ever going to put up, 110 points playing on the Hurricanes. Just that's the nature of their team. They're a volume-based offense. They never have a dominant power play. So if you're trying to get paid, you're trying to get that one big contract in your mid-20s, you want to get out of Carolina as fast as you can. And you don't want to go to a place like Columbus or Buffalo or Anaheim or the Sharks or wherever. You want an opportunity. And this is going to walk him to unrestricted free agency 2 years from now. 2 years from now, he will probably get there because in all honesty, he's going to try probably his damnedest to get there because it will be his one real opportunity to cash out. Because these guys just don't get a lot of them, frankly. Most guys, they get one real chance to go to UFA. I mean, look how good Jake Gensel is. Look at the career Jake Gensel's had to this point. And technically, he didn't even get to UFA, technically. His rights got traded and he signed before he was a UFA. Right. So if you're somebody like Necas who can flirt with 70 to 80 points, you probably think you can be a first-line winger or a second-line center on a good team. And instead, you've been volleyed between first-line right wing, third-line right wing, second-line center, had a bunch of different line mates over the years. And you've got a good toolbox. Like, I've always thought Necas is a pretty good skater. He's big, but he doesn't play big, which is kind of the knock against him. And
he cherry picks.
He does. He uses
his cherry picking.
He sits at the top of the zone. He'll float early because he's fast. And he knows if he gets the puck in space, he's actually going to be able to make something happen. But in Carolina, you're never going to really have the opportunity to explode. And that Carolina situation, it's weird. First it was Gensel's done to Gensel's going to wait and see. There are things that need to be ironed out till it's done. You could go back to the Dougie Hamilton situation a couple of years ago where they were like, we'll take Tony DeAngelo in the cap space over Dougie Hamilton, where they've just made some weird calls over the years on prioritizing guys. Like, they let Shea and Pesce walk, varying degrees of the merits to doing that. But your replacements were Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker, who I like Sean Walker, and I don't mind Shane Gostisbehere, but that's very clearly a step down from Pesce and Shea.
I don't hate the Pesce walk. I think Pesce has lost a step, and I think he was ever the fastest player in the NHL, but he's somebody that he's lost a little bit more than what he was in the past. And so he's going to be fine in New Jersey. I think they're going to find a way to manage that because their blue line is now a lot deeper. But I'm not too bent out of shape about that. But the Necas thing is very strange because prior to him signing the last bridge deal, he was like, hey, Rod, I want to be a center. And Rod was like, no. And Necas was like, okay, then I'll leave. And Rod was like, okay, fine, go ahead. And then he signed the bridge deal. And then the same thing happened this time around where he's like, hey, Rod, I want to be a center. Rod's like, no. I'm like, okay. He's like, okay, then I'll leave. And Rod's like, okay, fine, go ahead. And then he was supposed to go to Columbus. I just saw the Saravelli thing that, that the Jets were going to trade their whole farm and this whole ridiculous nonsense be a GM trade for Necas. That is not rooted in reality. I'm sorry to say. Like that, he was never going to
McGroarty on his own. They've been asking for a top 30 pick in the draft. That was the asking price a month ago at the actual draft.
Necas to Winnipeg under that particular trade was not happening, but the Columbus trade was very real. Apparently Necas did not want to play in Columbus, which from a player perspective of Necas's caliber, I understand. From the perspective of you'd rather be on a playoff team, especially when you're on a short-term contract. You want to play out, you want to do the best you can on a playoff team and maybe get, maybe go a long way instead of playing on Columbus. I understand that. But if you're somebody that doesn't want to be in Carolina, you can't all of a sudden be picky about where you gotta go. So Columbus's offer was the best offer that Carolina had. They just said, I'm not signing there, so that he comes back to Carolina after, he doesn't want to be there. The team doesn't really have a spot for him, considering he doesn't play defense. He's a cherry picker. Now, his offensive capabilities is outstanding, and I feel like a lot of his issues are mental, because he can play defense if he wanted to, because he has the foot speed. He's very quick. He could have the ability to forecheck if he wanted to have that ability. He doesn't really want it from what we've seen, from what Carolina has seen.
No, we're not doing does he really want it. It's July. We can't be questioning people's intensity in July.
Listen, I understand that, but the point is that he's a defensive liability, and that's something that Carolina that is something that Carolina does not like about Necas. So it's a very strange situation, and I kind of maybe wonder, I don't know if he stays there the whole 2 years.
No, there's a possibility you try and flip him, turn him into something, make a roster trade, something like that. Because as we've discussed ad nauseum here for the first few minutes of the show, he very clearly doesn't want to be there. The Hurricanes think they can do better. Like, their initial plan this offseason was just Gensel as the replacement and trade Necas for a defenseman. And instead, we traded Gensel's rights for like a 6th round pick. And we have a guy we don't really want in replacement. And our top 9 is worse. Our top 6 defensemen are worse. We're another year removed from, they still have a lot of upside, and really the long-term trajectory of the Hurricanes really comes down to how you feel about Jack Drury and how you feel about Seth Jarvis. Jarvis was able to put together a pretty nice season last year, but I don't know if he screams best player on a cup team. I think he's probably 2nd or 3rd best player on a cup team, and even that might be a little bit of hot. That might be even be a little bit too high as far as his trajectory.
I don't know. I like Seth Jarvis a lot. I think he's a difference maker. I don't know whether he's the ultimate player that, that drives a team to the Stanley Cup. Like you said, I don't know if he could be that kind of player, but I like him as a player, and I think that he can make things happen. I think he can, especially come playoff time, he's the kind of guy that will score that important goal or make that important play. And that's something that you really want to see out of a top 6 player. So I'm a big fan of Seth Jarvis. I'm interested to see how his trajectory goes from here and whether he can really reach that pinnacle. Or, I mean, even if he stays at this level, he's still a pretty, solid, really great player. But if he can go above and beyond and turn into that franchise caliber forward, that is going to really set Carolina apart. Because as of right now, as you talked about, they made moves, but did they get better?
No, they stopgap. They're stopgaps. They're trying to stop the bleeding moves, that you lost guys, but you need to fill in those holes. And that's really the reality when you're a team like Carolina that leverages a lot. They went into the deadline knowing, hey, we're going to trade for Gensel, but we're probably going to lose a lot of guys this summer. They signed Orlov last summer, not this one, last summer, with the mindset of he's probably going to replace one of the guys we're going to lose the following summer. So with that in mind, you can put that framing.
I'm also interested, real quick, before we move on. I'm interested to see how Tulski's strategy for the Hurricanes is either changing or has changed, given how the Hurricanes were in the direction that the Hurricanes were going prior to that GM turnover. Because Tulski was kind of handed this, hey, Gensel might be on the way out. Necas doesn't want to be there. Like, here you go. I'm going to go to Columbus. You take care of this. So Tulski's doing a lot of firefighting right now. I'm interested to see how he navigates the deadline next summer and and the years beyond for Carolina. Because right now, I'm sure maybe some of his ideas are being implemented, but I also would have to wager that a lot of this was already set in motion prior to the GM turnover.
You would think, that's always kind of the assumption when you promote a general manager from within, the idea that you'd at least touch base with the idea that, hey, if you were going to do this, what would be your ramp up plan to taking over the reins? Who would you want to keep that's in the front office? Who would you want to replace? Do we need to scale more things out? Do we need more assistants? Do we need more support staff? That type of thing. The other real news, we're a few days away from a Rangers arbitration hearing.
Friday.
Nobody's going to be particularly happy with any of the results because most people understand that Ryan Lindgren's contract, whatever it is after this arbitration one, is going to be something that nobody wants a part of. Just straight up, you are never going to thrive paying for a defenseman who doesn't put up counting stats. And there will be people who value, blocking shots, defense, intangibles, his friendship with various guys on the team. I know that's really been an undercurrent of a lot of the coverage of the soft news coverage of the last few weeks is how great of friends the team is, that they're sad that Barclay Goodrow's gone, that this person's in this person's wedding. And the spin zone's well underway. The narrative spin zone about how a month ago it was, we need drastic full-scale change, to, well, everybody's really good friends here, and we don't really want to mess that up in a matter of a month because it proved too difficult to make the drastic types of changes that were needed. So with that in mind, I mean, I can't imagine the number is going to be ungodly, being that it's a 1-year arbitration type deal. And the Rangers very well could work something out prior to Friday or after the hearing and before the judgment's given. That's how that works. That's how it went with Stepan, if I remember correctly, where they actually went to the hearing. They met, they gave their numbers to the arbitrator. And then while that was being done, they ultimately were able to iron out the contract and make it happen. Or right before they sat down to make the arbitration hearing, the contract was ironed out. So with that in mind, I don't think the offseason has as negative as a tenor as it feels. I think anecdotally, a lot of this is frustration that they got really close with what looked like the best Rangers team in the last 15 years. And the solutions were to run it back, except to replace Blake Wheeler with Riley Smith and replace Eric Gustafsson with Zach Jones. I understand a lot of people feeling very bleh. I'm one of them. I don't feel particularly moved. I know The Athletic had done their fan survey of Ranger fans last week, and they said the biggest issue was underperforming star players as opposed to defense, that if the Rangers could add anything, it should be another top 6 forward, not a better defenseman. And I think a lot of people are wrong about that. You've heard me say that since the contract final ended. If the Rangers have 2 functional defensemen instead of Trouba and Lindgren, or a healthy Adam Fox as opposed to 60% of Adam Fox, I think there's a real argument they probably squeak by Florida or at least get to a Game 7. Instead, we're sitting here, everybody's a year older, guys are going to be more expensive, and nobody's really confident that you're going to be able to run off 2 seasons in a row like that. You look, teams that win the President's Trophy usually have a good 5 to 10 standings points regression. That means guys aren't playing as well. You probably peg a Panarin down 10 to 15 points. You probably bump Trocheck down 5 to 10 points. And the points aren't what matters, but needing that level of cohesion, needing that level of performance, that's what you need from the President's Trophy season. That's to translate into the playoffs and go forward. Instead, we all have to be like, okay, we know they're going to make the playoffs, but then when they get there, what's going to happen?
Yeah, we talked about this on previous episodes, and it just bears repeating that, a lot of things have to go right for you to win the President's Trophy. Health-wise, bounces-wise, the 1-goal games, the Rangers seemingly won all of last season. They were really good at the 1-goal games. A lot of things have to go right for you to break records. I don't know if you know this, Nick, but breaking records when you're a 100-year-old franchise is not easy.
The Rangers also just don't have a great history, but that's, besides the point.
Yes, sure. But winning 55 games is not easy. And, it's something that if they win 52 or whatever, or 51 or 49 or some number around there, shouldn't ring an alarm bell just because they didn't break another ridiculous record that they just broke last year. But yeah, I would agree with you. Like, the Rangers need a top 6 forward, a top 6 winger? Yes. Absolutely. We've talked about this for, ad nauseum as well. And the Rangers would be a much better team with a solidified top 6 right winger as opposed to what they currently have. Now, Riley Smith is better than Blake Wheeler. No one's debating that. this is a better opening night roster than the Rangers have had. There's no Boninos, there's no Jake Buncheletters, there's no Blake Wheeler, 37-year-old on one leg. Like, Riley Smith is still a capable middle six, top 9 winger. But is he the top 6 bona fide player the Rangers need to get over the hump? I don't really know the answer to that. And you look at the defense, the Rangers need a defenseman. And we've talked about this as well. Like, that's their biggest problem. That really is their undoing, is their inability to defend. Like, Adam Fox is tremendous. He was injured because, of that collision in Game 4 against Washington. And he never got quite healthy enough to be the Adam Fox that we know he can be. Ryan Lindgren struggled mightily in the playoffs. He just wasn't good for long stretches of the playoff run. I would hope maybe I'm holding out hope that he kind of bounces back. It plays a little bit better this year. He didn't have that great of a year, but he had a pretty miserable playoffs, and hopefully he gets back to around at least where he was prior to this season. Maybe he gets, obviously I would love for him to become a star player. That'd be fantastic, right? That'd be awesome. Zach Jones, I have confidence in. I want to see how he handles himself in a solidified role. But overall, I mean, yeah, Jacob Troup is still here. He still can't defend. This is we've been talking about this for a while, and until you fix the elephant in the room, the elephant's not going anywhere. Like, the elephant's still stampeding around the room. Like, just because you put a hat on him and say, "Oh, look how cute he is," that doesn't mean that he's not still stampeding around the room. He's still here.
With that in mind, we can change the tenor of the conversation, talk about something a little more fun. I don't know if you know this, Andrew, but the Olympics are going on right now.
Oh, really?
Yes. American women.
Gojira, baby. Listen, Gojira performing. Oh,
You're the one person I've talked to who actually liked the opening ceremony.
I like Gojira's performance. I love Gojira. Yes. So seeing them.
We weren't amused by Lee Flagbearer. We weren't amused. Like, come on. It's stupid. That's the whole point of the opening ceremony of the Olympics. Is it's over the top. It's dramatized. It's great. That's the entire point.
I love the whole. Listen, as a metal fan, Gojira being the first metal band to perform at the Olympics, the Olympic opening ceremony, I loved it. I for one think it was fantastic.
Yeah, no, the American women, strong performance today. Even though they couldn't hit a single 3 to save their lives, still won by 30 points. The American men. Sunday afternoon, that's a delight. Shout out KD,
destroyed
the best
Serbia.
tweeter of all time.
Yeah,
KD.
Serbia was a plus or -0 with Jokic on the floor, and they were a -26 for like the 8 seconds he was off the floor. It's incredible.
Yeah, and hey, once Kerr stops starting Embiid every game and they just roll with AD,
maybe play Tatum. That'd be nice.
We don't need to play Tatum. We don't. I understand.
It's not that we need to. It's that you should, because he's one of the best.
He will be one of the guys going forward. That's the argument for doing it now.
Hopefully.
So, with that in mind, if Gary Bettman's not lying, if the Players Association is not lying, we are going to see NHL players play in a best-on-best international tournament, both this upcoming February and 2 years from now at the actual Winter Olympics. The last time NHL players went to the Winter Olympics was 2014. We exist in a very different NHL than we did in 2014. The coach of the men's team for America in 2014 was John Tortorella. The coach of the Canadian team in 2014 was Mike Babcock. It was the same case at the World Cup of Hockey 2 years later. But with that in mind, and we have the foundations, the 4 teams that are playing next year in the 4 nations. They've announced the first 6 players for their team. So this isn't going to be anything groundbreaking, just naming good hockey players for the next 10 to 15 minutes. But with that in mind, the main thing I want to talk about, and we'll start with the United States. I want to make an argument this might be the best pool of options America's ever had. Like, I understand in the 90s, Madonna, Hall, Brian Leach, Richter, I get it. But we're talking about America legitimately can kind of stand face to face with Canada and is better in 2 position groups. Like, you look at the pool of defensemen and the goalies Canada's going to draw from versus the pool of candidates that America's going to draw from. And I feel really good, and being that Mike Sullivan is the coach and it's not somebody like John Tortorella, there aren't going to be any favors. There's going to be no Justin Abdelkader representing the United States. There's going to be no Brandon Dubinsky. There's going to be no Matt Niskanen. And that's no disrespect to those guys. Those guys all had useful, solid NHL careers.
Sure. But
they should not be in a best on best international basketball tournament. For the lack of a better word, there's
no grit. There's no grit guy on Team USA. No, how could you do this?
And the stupid point that they always bring up was you need that if you're going to beat a team that's better than you. Well, why don't you bring the best team you possibly can? Canada doesn't bring Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson will not be on the Olympic team next year. 2 years from now. Yeah. If they want a defense first gritty guy, they're going to bring Mark Stone. They're going to bring Brad Marchand. They're going to bring real defense first forwards who are able to suppress opportunities. So the first 6 guys that America's bringing, these are confirmed that they're definitely going to be on the team, are Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Matthew Tkachuk, Charlie McAvoy, Quinn Hughes, and Adam Fox. Right off the bat there, that's great.
Really good.
That is infinitely better than the group America brought last time. America's first line center in the World Cup of Hockey 8 years ago was Ryan Kessler. Ryan Kessler, Zach Parise, Patrick Kane was the first line in an international tournament. Joe Pavelski was on that team as well. But in the last 5 to 10 years, it feels like that development of the U.S. national team development program has really kind of bridged this gap where you consistently see guys that come out of that program, whether it's any of the guys I just mentioned, or Trevor Zegras, or Cole Caulfield, or Brock Faber, that by the time they get to the NHL at 21, 22 years old, they're ready to go. There's no, we're going to build this guy up gradually. It's, okay, you did 2 years of this. You went to college for a year. Look at Brock Faber, who got paid today. He came in and instantly started playing 25 minutes a night for the Wild as a 22-year-old. That was not a thing 5 to 10 years ago for American defensemen.
And I'm glad that it's happening. Brock Faber was terrific in Minnesota, and this is a great bet for Minnesota to have. Because I was debating with somebody on Twitter. I think it was Anaheim calling because they didn't understand the signing from a team perspective of why give him so much money right now? Well, for one, if you're Brock Faber, you take that every day of the week because one bad hit or one bad fall and your career's over, you take the stability every day of the week. But also, if you're the Wild, Brock Faber was one of, if not the best player on your team last season. So the fact that you can say, okay, he's shown this as a rookie, his ceiling is going to be so much higher with experience and with more ice time and all this, and with going, now that his rookie season is over, all those quote unquote like rookie growing pains, like those, a lot of those have been ironed out. So he's only going to get better. There's very little evidence to support that 23-year-old Brock Faber, who just had a terrific rookie career, is going to get worse. So it's a great bet for Minnesota because they lock up one of their pillar guys on the team to a long-term contract. And well, if you don't do it now, you'd have to pay him more. The
price is only going to go up the longer.
Right, exactly. So it's a great bet for Minnesota. It's a great contract for Brock Faber, and he's going to be fantastic, and he's going to look really good on Team USA in 2026 if that happens. Now, if is a strong word because as probable as it is at this point, you just with the Olympics and the NHL, you just never know for sure. So it's always an if. Brock Faber is going to be there. Fox is going to be there. McAvoy, Quinn Hughes is going to be there. Like Zach Werenski, if you want to put Keandre Miller or
Keandre
Miller, yeah, like
Pesci,
right? Pesci. There's a lot of good talent to go around on the blue line. Yeah, right. Him as well. You talk about the goals. Connor Hellebuyck is right now the best goalie on the planet. He's an American. He's gonna. I would have to imagine going to be on Team USA. You put Jeremy Swayman there, Thatcher Demko there. That's a really, really good goalie rotation. And the forwards are, awesome. Like the 6 guys that were announced, they weren't a surprise to anybody. But Austin Matthews off the rip is infinitely better than Ryan Kessler was 7-8 years ago. No disrespect to Ryan Kessler. He was a great player at, during that era. But he's not Austin Matthews.
NHL. That's
he's
the
not
other
Austin
thing
Matthews.
It's also a very different league. 10 years ago, Ben won the Art Ross with 87 points 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews had 70 goals.
Yeah.
For some perspective. For some perspective. You get Eichel in there. who's been a first-line center on a Stanley Cup winner, Matthew Tkachuk, who's a point-per-game first-line winger on a Stanley Cup contender. And then the fun part is just the debate for the other spots. I have to imagine Jack Hughes is going to be on this team. He might be on the wing, not at center, but for size reasons. I imagine Jake Gensel cracks this group. I imagine Clayton Keller will crack this group. I think Kyle Connor almost certainly. I think Jason Robertson almost certainly. And then it starts to open up. You could do things like Chris Kreider, Alex DeBrincat, Tage Thompson, Brock Nelson. You can really, Dylan Larkin. They just have a lot of options to really kind of whatever they want this team to look like. Where in the past, they really didn't have an abundance. Canada, last time they was in an international tournament, they played a line where Crosby played with Marchand and Bergeron, and good luck getting the puck from them. Just at that point, there's nothing you can do. Whereas this group, there's not really going to be, that glaring, oh God, you can't have that line out there. Like, this is as functional a Team USA as there's ever been.
This has the potential, at least on paper. Obviously, we'll know for the 2 years, but this has the potential to be one of, if not the best Team USA rosters ever.
Yeah, especially it'll be fun to look back at it 5 or 10 years after that.
Yeah,
and you look at all the accolades that this group puts up. Whether you talk about individual awards, counting stats, cups, this is a really good group.
Yeah.
The fact that the first guy off this team might be someone like Chris Kreider or JT Miller or Dylan Larkin, that's a really high floor. All of those guys are upper echelon, top, 50 to 60 players in the entire world. And Team USA is now at a point where they can say, we don't really need you. We can go for upside. That'll be one thing I'll be curious to see if they try and do either both Tkachuk brothers. I think Brady probably ends up cracking the mix as well. I'll be curious to see if Luke Hughes has ingratiated himself enough. He has enough run 2 years from now to sneak on. But I imagine they bring one of Luke Hughes and Brock Faber. I don't think they'll bring both.
I think they bring Faber. I kind of don't think they bring Luke Hughes at this current juncture, just because Brock had a terrific year and Luke had struggles.
Luke was also 20 years old, playing the most minutes of any defenseman on the team in his first real minutes. I don't disagree.
I don't disagree with that. But if you take there's only so much space on this team. And if you take a look at, the first at minimum 5 spots are filled, and the last 1 or 2 are probably going to be filled by, people with a little bit more run to them. There is a good chance that they kind of pass on Luke Hughes. Now, I'm not saying that there's no chance, or he might, he's not good or whatever, but given what the roster looks like right now, I mean, if Luke Hughes has a terrific year next season, then I think the conversation will definitely steer a different way. But as of right now, if the top 5 or top 4 or however you want to spin it is what it is, and I would have to imagine Team USA leans on veterans and sort of that leadership, kind of like that rock bottom 6 pairing, then that would be the way that Luke Hughes doesn't make it.
Yeah, definitely. Like we've said, experience does matter in these types of tournaments. They do typically prefer the best on best. But the ironic thing is, those guys have played in best on best tournaments more recently than some of these other guys, because they've been in the World Juniors a lot more recently than any of these guys who are good and no, I'm not going to the World Championships. Why would I do that? I want to go on vacation like most players do when the season's over. Other than that, like you had mentioned, the goaltending, they're at a point where Jake Ottinger just probably doesn't even get to be the third goalie. Whereas 7 years ago, it was Jonathan Quick, Ryan Miller, and Corey Schneider. Again, we're just another tier up at that point, versus where Canada was at that point, where it was Marc-Andre Fleury, it was Carey Price. And just, again, America has tiered up, especially on the back end and especially on defense. We're about to talk about Canada right now, and I'm almost ready to make the argument the Canadian defensemen are better, and the American defensemen are better, and the American goalies are definitely better. So Canada's first 6, they announced Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon, Point, Marchand, and Cale Makar. So again, the forwards definitely better. Those first 6 forwards, that's 3 of the 4 best players in the entire world. When Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon, that's 2 of the 10 best players in the world. Crosby, McDavid very well could end up, 5, 6, 4, 5 all time in the history of the sport. But the further you go down the lineup, you start to be okay, I kind of see it. Because Mitch Marner, Mark Stone, almost certainly. Zach Hyman, probably.
I think he gets it.
Steven Stamkos, probably.
Yeah.
Carter Verhaeghe, probably. Sam Reinhart, probably. Connor Bedard, almost certainly. Then you get to the back end, it gets a little more dicey. You know, Josh Morrissey, Alex Pietrangelo, Dougie Hamilton, Noah Dobson, Devon Toews, Thomas Chabot, Shea Theodore. It gets a lot more dicey on the back end for Canada. And especially the further you go down their forward group, you know, JT Miller or Sam Reinhart, it's pretty close to me. Jason Robertson or Connor Bedard right now, I'm taking Jason Robertson right now. We're playing these games. It's not based on who you want for the rest of their careers. Mark Stone 2 years from now, maybe he's not even in the pool because his back is bad, so bad. Zach Hyman, maybe he's not a point per game player anymore 2 years from now, but that's the fun of doing this now and then keeping an eye on it over the next year and a half.
It's very interesting to take a look at these rosters. And the biggest thing that I can say from this is, wow, these teams are close.
Yeah.
Which is something that hasn't really ever been said before.
No.
You could take a look at maybe the top line and say, okay, the top line could be close, the top six could be close, or, you know, the some of the defensemen could be, but the roster through and through being as close as this is, I think, unprecedented in international play in the NHL or, you know, beyond. But it goes to show how far USA Hockey has come. Like, if you're an American or if you're a fan of Team USA or you work at Team USA, you take a step back and you say, like, wow,
we're right
change, the positive change that American hockey has seen rapidly. I mean, I understand that Brock Faber, you know, at the youngest is like 22. Like, this is not just something that happened 2 days ago. Like, this is not a rapid change, but it's rapid in the course of, like, 10 years ago, Ryan Kessler was the first line center and he's good, but like not Austin Matthews good. And even the fourth line, you take a look at it and you go, Abdelkader's not here. Like, you actually have hockey players that can play hockey really well, and they're playing on the team. Instead of, like, the blue line is great. Every forward could be great. The fourth string goalie on Team USA, whether it's Demko or Ottinger, you take your pick, they're going to be really good, and they're not even going to make the team. That is such a great look for American hockey when you're at the point now where you have really good hockey players sitting at home.
Yeah.
Because they were
not like Phil Kessel sitting at home.
Not like Phil Kessel. Yeah. Not like Phil Kessel, for sure. But they didn't make the team because there's so much talent that somebody had to be left on the cutting room floor. It's not like a Kessel situation where he should have been there and was inexplicably not invited for reasons that were beyond human comprehension. Like, this is now a team that could potentially be this is probably the best overall Team USA roster ever assembled, and that is a real, you know, a great look for how far USA Hockey has come.
100%. And we haven't even talked about the goalies. You know, Canada's looking at Aiden Hill, Jordan Binnington, Tristan Jarry, and Stuart Skinner. You know, Hill's got a cup. Jarry was an accompaniment. Stuart Skinner has been to a cup, but none of those guys is inspiring a lot of confidence. And these tournaments are funky. Guys come in, they're cold, they're not great. You know, I remember the one tournament where they started with Ryan Miller and he got shelled the first game, and they went to Jonathan Quick. Other way around. Jonathan Quick started in the 14 Olympics. He didn't play well, and then they went to Ryan Miller. So it all depends, but on paper, they're right there with each other.
Yeah.
And it's mostly because of the depth. It's mostly because of the goaltending. Like we just said, any team that can roll out McDavid and McKinnon together, okay. Good luck.
Good luck. GG's.
Yeah, you're not doing better than that. Those are two of the three, if not the two best hockey players on the entire planet. And they're both like, I want to play on the wing so we can have Crosby in the middle of us. just for good measure. And that you go down the list, they got some experience, you know, guys like Stamkos, guys like Mark Stone, but
Stamkos is 34 now? He's going to be 36?
He'll get on the team because they want the old heads. Because he's missed, you know. He didn't get to go to the 14 Olympics, and he was on the World Cup of Hockey team, but I do think that will be a consideration for some of these selections where They want to do right by guys who have missed 2 full Olympic cycles because of stupidity, as opposed to things out of their own control. So next up is Sweden. Sweden's first 6 were Zibanejad, Willie Nylander, Forsberg, Victor Hedman, Gus Forsling, Erik Karlsson. Solid. That feels a little bit better than the Sweden we saw last time around, where it was the Sedin brothers, young Zibanejad. Granted, Sweden's strength has been for 15, 20 years now, been their defense, because an entire country watched Nick Lidstrom win 7 Norrises after turning 30, and they were all like, I want to be like that guy. But the pool of defensemen is really good. Dahlin, Ekholm, Hedman, Erik Karlsson, Rasmus Andersson, Hampus Lindholm. When Adam Larsson is the first cut, that's a pretty good group compared to where Sweden's been at various points.
I like Team Sweden. I think they could do a lot of damage. Is their potential roster going to be as good as Canada and USA? Probably not. But I do think they could do a lot of damage, especially, Markstrom is probably going to be there. I would think Ullmark is probably going to be there if, the Ottawa Senators don't completely tank his value, which, would it be the first time that Ottawa has done that to a player? But this is a team that should be scary to Team USA and Canada. Now, will they win it all? I don't think so. But they're a team that if you come in, if you're Canada or Team USA, and you walk into a game against Sweden and you play like the Rangers do when they play Arizona, they're going to get smoked.
Sweden's strength is the fact they're going to have a really good team defense. Because a lot of their forwards have pretty good defensive profiles too. Where you talk about guys like Eriksson Ek, who's really good defensively, or someone like Michael Backlund or William Karlsson. Elias Pettersson is in the mix for them as well. That's a pretty good high-end group. You can add Jesper Bratt there, Adrian Kempe, Lucas Raymond. You imagine Leo Carlsson is probably there 2 years from now. Maybe. Elias Lindholm is probably there 2 years from now. It's a pretty solid group. They have enough talent where they will be in the mix to medal. They have enough talent where, especially because of the nature of their talent, where they're so good defensively, they might be able to turn one of these games into those classic rock fights where it's 2-1 after 2 and one team has had the puck a whole lot.
All Sweden needs is a power play, so that's Zibanejad can score.
Hey man, maybe that's the key. Maybe Zibanejad's just good for international play like James Rodriguez is for Colombia. But it's a good group. Sweden is definitely the best of the rest once you get past America and Canada.
They're good. And this is, are they slated to win? I kind of don't think so. I remember that has been so long, but when Lundqvist won with Sweden back in, what was it, 06? Like, were they the favorites back then? I can't remember.
Probably not. No,
probably not. But this is a team that, again, like if you say, oh, we can beat them, we don't have to worry about them, they could win the gold. If Canada takes them, at 90% as opposed to 100, if Team USA takes them at 90%, this is a team that could upset everybody. You give them enough opportunities and they will outscore, because good luck scoring on Sweden. Now I understand, they don't have Hellebuck, they don't have, Shesterkin, but their team defense has the potential to be so foundationally solid that it almost doesn't matter that they don't have Hellebuck, because good luck getting through that system. You have 5 guys that are so well built off of playing good fundamental defense that, okay, well, McDavid and McKinnon have all the skills, absolutely, but good luck. Good luck getting through that barrage of a brick wall that is Team Sweden's defense. So, that could get away from these guys quickly if they don't figure it out.
That 2006 Sweden team: Lidstrom, Kronwall, Matt Sundin, Peter Forsberg, the Sedin brothers, Daniel Alfredsson. That's a really good high end group. Lineup, I mean. I'm pulling up the bracket here now on Wikipedia, but these teams, it's such a different world. I mean, the gold medal game that year was Finland, Sweden. Canada didn't even medal in that tournament. And that Canadian team, had Brodeur, it had the Niedermayer brothers. That was a really good team. We exist in a very different universe now where Canada just brings, 15 future Hall of Famers, basically, is the way it kind of feels. Finland's group, Barkov, Rantanen, Heiskanen, Lindell, UC Saros, and Sebastian Aho, their first 6. Finland's in the same kind of boat as Sweden, where their high-end guys are great, and it's the depth that really starts to be the issue. Whether or not Laine goes, Teravainen, Rupe Hintz will be there, Eli Tolvanen, Matthias Mikkeli, Luosterainen. The problem for Finland's the defense. It's very top heavy. Once you get past Heiskanen and Lindell, Vakinen, Valimaki, Olimata, it's just not on the caliber.
NHL.com has Rasmus Ristolainen slated to go, which is just hilarious.
2 years from now, I don't know if Rasmus Ristolainen is going to be in the NHL. Like, I'm not even trying to be a dickhead. I really don't know.
I agree, which makes the list which makes the fact that he's on the projected list even funnier to me.
Oh, 100%. Finland's in the same kind of boat where they have enough NHL talent where they'll be taken seriously. They'll have a reasonable chance to medal. They did pretty well in the World Cup of Hockey in 2016, but you imagine they're a tier below. And then real quick, for the sake of conversation, whether or not Russia actually gets to participate is a different conversation. And based on right now, I don't think they'll be at the 26 Olympics because they're not participating in the Summer Olympics. But it does kind of feel like you got to take the medals that happened in this tournament with a grain of salt, kind of like the last two, where Russia was really the only team that had serious pros on it, where, Kaprizov was on the the Olympic Athletes of Russia team or whatever that won the gold medal, and then the Canadian team that had a bunch of AHL guys. But Kucherov, Ovechkin, Malkin, Kaprizov, Panarin, Svechnikov, Buch. It's a really good forward group. The defense is obviously the weak link. That's always the Russian weak link, but they got the best goalie room in the world. Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, Sorokin. You're not going to do better than that, really. You're just not. But they have enough talent where if they are allowed to participate, even if it's under a neutral flag, they'll be in the mix.
It's always a dangerous team. Team Russia has always been pretty not great defensively.
Yeah.
That's kind of their style. But offensively and goaltending wise, they are top of the top. Those three goaltenders, I mean, we listed Team USA's goalies and they have some incredible talent in there. And we mentioned like Jake Ottinger could not even make the team. Like, that's how good Team USA's goalies are. But Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, and I understand Sorokin didn't have a great year, but I would have to imagine he plays better than what he did last year. Sorokin is as lethal of a three goalie rotation as you can have. The counterpoint to the rotation is so strong. Well, only one of them could be on the ice at one point. So it's great that USA has all this goalie talent and Russia could have all this goalie talent if that's a team that comes together. But only one of the other two have to sit on the bench or up in the media booth. Like, okay, well, your blue line isn't great, your depth isn't stupendous, and you have a great goalie, but all right, well, you're gonna Shesterkin, or Vasilevsky or Sorokin, whenever they play, it's like, okay, well, they're gonna have to play like the Rangers do, where, okay, well, we have a lot of offense, but the goalies are gonna be real busy.
All right, so the last thing I wanted to do, I have the Team Canada lineup from the World Cup of Hockey, the last serious best-on-best tournament that NHL players participated in. The first line on that Canada team was Sidney Crosby, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, with Shea Weber and Mark-Edward Vlasic as the first pair, and Carey Price as the goalie. Stamkos, Getzlaf, Tavares, Doughty, Jay Bouwmeester, Corey Perry, Jonathan Toews, Logan Couture, Brent Burns, Alex Pietrangelo, and then Matt Duchene, Ryan O'Reilly, Jumbo Joe. I mean, goddamn, man.
It's pretty great.
Goddamn. Like, what do you do? What do you do as a hockey player if you look up and it's Marchand, Crosby, and Bergeron coming at you? What is...
You turn the console off. That's what you do.
And then you compare it, like Team USA, Zach Parise, Joe Pavelski, TJ Oshie, Matt Niskanen, Ryan McDonough, Patrick Kane, Derek Stepan, James Van Riemsdyk, Ryan Suter,
Coyotes legend,
John Carlson, Blake Wheeler, Ryan Kessler, Max Pacioretty, Jack Johnson, Dustin Byfuglien, Kyle Palmieri, Brandon Dubinsky, legend. Justin Abdelkader playing in front of Ben Bishop.
Great.
Like, that's another planet. I mean, Kyle Palmieri wouldn't be in like the first 50 guys.
Yeah, the bar was on the floor.
Yes.
Compare now. I'm not to disparage the guys that are on the team, but like comparatively from then to now, this is a different book that we're reading. This is not the same universe, planet, solitary system. Like we're in two different time zones completely here. That team was, some of those guys were good. Some of those guys were like, what are we doing here? This current but projected iteration of Team USA would destroy that version of Team USA all day, every day, and twice on Sundays.
It's a fun time. Patriotism in a sports context is fun. Other than that, it's usually pretty bad. But I was banging my chest watching that guy with glasses from Penn State win that thing in gymnastics. This is the best. When there are
also
sports
Simone Biles is
that's later.
I can't believe what Simone Biles is doing.
That's what it looks like, brother. That is what it looks like. When they name all of the moves after you, that is what it looks like.
Every time I open up Twitter, it's like Simone Biles is doing something that nobody has ever done before, ever, and she did it so flawlessly that nobody can believe what they saw. It's like at a certain point, what are you gonna do? Like, how are you supposed to compete with that?
You're not. When they name the moves after you, and then they ban some of the moves because nobody else can do them, you are what it looks like.
And she's still winning.
Yes, correct. And she wasn't supposed to come back for this Olympic cycle, but was like, you know what? I'll do it anyway. Just kind of like, I guess I could do it.
I guess I could go to Paris for a little bit, have some fun.
It must be nice. I aspire to that level of competitiveness in basically anything. The best I can do, I'd be a gold medalist and making my train at Penn Station. If that was in the Olympics, nobody's beating me. No one is beating me. I've got the best reaction time on the planet. When I hear that announcement start, like last Sunday coming back from Blink, we were waiting for the train to go back to Jersey to go drop my friends off. And the announcement started, my ears perked up. I looked up at the board. I saw the number flash before it. I turned around. I was already down on the platform. None of my friends even noticed I had moved. That's the kind of, I'm not sitting on the train. I am lazy. I'm tired.
That'd be interesting. What would be our gold medal event? Yours would be making the train. I don't even know what mine would. Mine would be bricking threes. Like that, I'm so good at that. I'm really good at clanging threes. Eventually, like I'll hit some, every now and again. Maybe the occasional floater, but other than that, I don't know that. If there's a gold medal event for most amount of threes attempted versus how many you actually make, put me in, coach.
Drinking light beer on a patio at a restaurant, I'm very good at that. Eating as many bowls of bottomless chips and salsa as possible at a restaurant. I can put some serious numbers up.
I would love that.
All right, that'll do it for this week's episode. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please be so kind, leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell, get a notification whenever new content goes live. We'll talk to you guys on Monday, or if news breaks before then, see you guys soon.
Later.